I was standing in my garage on a Tuesday morning in Phoenix, Arizona, staring at the empty space where 200 feet of Ethernet cable should have been, when I realized someone had actually broken into my house and stolen the most random thing possible. Not my tools, not my mountain bike, not even the expensive power washer sitting right there in plain sight. Just the cables I had coiled neatly on the wall-mounted organizer, ready for the weekend project of running hardwired internet throughout my home office. My name is Peter Patterson, and I had lived in the Saguaro Hills community for 3 years without major incident. The Homeowners Association had always been a minor annoyance with their endless rules about mailbox colors and approved plant species, but nothing that made me want to move. That was about to change in ways I could not have predicted that morning. I checked the garage door lock. No signs of forced entry. I checked the side door that connected to the backyard. Also locked, no damage. Whoever had taken my cables had either picked a lock with surgical precision or had access to my garage through means I had not yet figured out. The violation felt personal in a way that made my skin crawl. This was not a random break-in. Someone had come into my space specifically for those cables. I called the Phoenix Police Department non-emergency line and filed a report, though the dispatcher's tone suggested that stolen Ethernet cables ranked somewhere below jaywalking on their priority list. After giving them all the details, I started thinking about the timing. I had been at my sister's place in Scottsdale the entire previous day, getting back around 9 at night. The cables had definitely been there Sunday evening because I had reorganized the garage that afternoon. The neighborhood Facebook group seemed like the logical next step. I posted about the theft, asking if anyone had seen suspicious activity or had issues with their Ring cameras. Within 20 minutes, 3 other residents commented that they had also experienced strange thefts over the past month. One person was missing garden hoses. Another lost a bag of concrete mix from their carport. A third could not find their extension ladder that had been secured to the side of their shed. The pattern was bizarre. These were not high-value items that someone could easily fence. They were random household things that suggested either a very confused thief or someone who needed specific items for specific purposes. I was leaning toward the latter explanation, which meant someone in or near the community was likely responsible. That afternoon, I decided to walk the neighborhood and do some investigating on my own. Saguaro Hills was a planned community of about 200 homes, built in the early 2010s when Phoenix was expanding rapidly. The houses were cookie-cutter Southwestern style with beige stucco, terracotta roof tiles, and yards full of xeriscaping and desert plants. The HOA maintained common areas that included a small park, a community pool, and walking trails that connected to the larger desert preserve. I started at the south end of the neighborhood and worked my way north, paying attention to any homes that looked like they might be under renovation or construction. Someone needed Ethernet cables, garden hoses, concrete, and a ladder. That suggested home improvement projects. About halfway through my walk, I noticed activity at a house on Ocotillo Drive. There was no contractor sign in the yard, but the garage door was open and I could see someone working inside. As I got closer, I recognized the person immediately. Gerald Mitchell. He was a board member of the Saguaro Hills HOA, one of 3 people who made decisions about our community rules and enforced violations with the enthusiasm of a Soviet-era bureaucrat. Gerald was in his mid-50s, with a receding hairline that he tried to hide under a Phoenix Suns cap, and the kind of permanent scowl that suggested he had never experienced joy. He was running what looked like Ethernet cable through the wall of his garage into his house. "My Ethernet cable," I was willing to bet money on it. The rage that hit me was immediate and white-hot. This board member, this person who sent me nastagrams about my trash, cans being visible from the street for more than 12 hours, had broken into my garage and stolen my property. I stood there on the sidewalk, watching him work, debating my next move. Confronting him directly could go badly. He would just deny everything, and I had no proof beyond circumstantial evidence. I needed something more concrete before making accusations against an HOA board member who already did not like me. Instead, I took out my phone and casually snapped a few photos, making it look like I was checking messages while walking. The angle was good enough to show Gerald working with cable that looked identical to what I had purchased from Home Depot 3 weeks ago. I even had the receipt at home, which listed the specific brand and specifications. I continued my walk, mind racing with possibilities. Gerald lived alone after a divorce 2 years ago that had apparently been spectacular and acrimonious, according to neighborhood gossip. He was semi-retired from something in commercial real estate and spent most of his time enforcing HOA rules and working on his house. The guy had previously cited me for having a small oil stain on my driveway and for planting a Mexican bird of paradise tree that was supposedly not on the approved list, even though 3 other houses on my street had the same tree. The personal vendetta angle made sense. Gerald had it out for certain residents, and I was clearly on his list. But stealing from my garage crossed a line from petty bureaucratic tyranny into actual crime. I needed to figure out how he had accessed my garage. None of my locks had been damaged, which meant he either had picks or had somehow obtained a key. That thought stopped me cold. The HOA had master keys to certain community areas, but they absolutely should not have had keys to individual residences. However, I remembered something from when I first moved in. The builder had used the same contractor for all the garage door installations, and each opener came with a standard remote plus a wireless keypad option. I had never set up the keypad, but what if the default codes were all the same or followed a predictable pattern? I hurried back to my house and dug through the paperwork I had saved from the move-in. Sure enough, there was documentation about the garage door system with a default code listed. It was supposed to be changed by the homeowner, which I had never done because I just used the remote and never bothered with the keypad. If Gerald knew the default codes or had figured out the pattern, he could have accessed any garage in the neighborhood. This was bigger than just my stolen cables. This was a board member systematically breaking into homes to steal whatever he needed for his various projects. The audacity was staggering. I started documenting everything. I took screenshots of the original Facebook posts about the other thefts. I photographed my garage door keypad and the paperwork showing the default code. I made sure my Home Depot receipt was in a safe place. Then I went back through my phone to look at the photos I had taken of Gerald. They were decent quality, clearly showing him running cable through his wall. I checked my own cables against the product listing online. Same brand, same color, same specifications. It would not hold up in court on its own, but combined with everything else, it painted a clear picture. The question was what to do with this information. Going to the police seemed like the obvious answer, but I knew how these things worked. Without hard evidence of Gerald actually taking the cables from my garage, it would be his word against mine. The police would file a report and nothing would happen. Going to the other HOA board members was another option, but I did not know if they would take my side or circle the wagons around their colleague. I decided to wait and gather more evidence. If Gerald had stolen from me and others, he would likely do it again. I just needed to catch him in the act. I went to Best Buy that afternoon and purchased a sophisticated security camera system with motion detection and cloud storage. I spent the evening installing cameras covering my garage, driveway, and backyard. If Gerald or anyone else came back, I would have video proof. 3 days passed without incident. I went to work at my software development job, came home, and monitored the camera feeds on my phone. The most exciting thing captured was a javelina wandering through my backyard at 2 in the morning. But on Saturday morning, I got a motion alert from the garage camera at 6:30. I pulled up the live feed and watched in real time as Gerald Mitchell used the wireless keypad to open my garage door. He was wearing different clothes than when I had seen him before, but the Phoenix Suns cap was the same. He walked directly to my tool area and picked up my compound miter saw, examined it, then set it down. He seemed to be browsing, looking for something specific. I was still in bed, debating whether to confront him immediately or let him take something so I had him on camera actually stealing. The decision was made for me when he grabbed a box of screws and a package of cable ties, then walked out. The garage door closed behind him automatically. The entire incident took less than 2 minutes. I had him. Crystal clear video of an HOA board member breaking into my garage and taking my property. My hands were shaking as I saved the video file and made multiple backup copies. This was exactly what I needed to go to the police and potentially press charges. But first, I wanted to confront Gerald directly. I wanted to see his face when he realized he had been caught. I threw on clothes and walked over to Ocotillo Drive. It was still early, but I could see lights on in Gerald's house. I rang the doorbell and waited. He opened the door wearing reading glasses and holding a cup of coffee, looking confused to see me. "Peter, what are you doing here?" "I think you know exactly why I am here, Gerald." I kept my voice level, though anger was burning in my chest. "Want to tell me why you were in my garage 20 minutes ago?" His confusion looked genuine for a split second, then his expression hardened. "I have no idea what you are talking about. I have been home all morning." "Really?" "Because I have you on camera using my garage door keypad to break in and steal my stuff, along with the Ethernet cables you took earlier this week." I held up my phone, showing him a screenshot from the video. "Want to try again?" The color drained from Gerald's face. He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried to step back and shut the door. I put my foot in the doorway, not aggressively but enough to prevent him from closing it. "You need to leave my property," he said, voice tight. "And you need to return everything you stole from me and probably half a dozen other people in this neighborhood. Otherwise, I am taking this video to the police and filing charges for burglary." "It is not burglary. The doors were not locked and I just borrowed a few things. Community resources." The sheer audacity of that statement left me momentarily speechless. "Community resources. You broke into my private garage and stole my personal property. That is literally the definition of burglary, you absolute idiot." Gerald's face flushed red. "Watch how you talk to me. I am on the HOA board, and I can make your life very difficult. You already did that when you started stealing from me. Now you are going to return everything, pay for any damages, and resign from the board, or I go to the police right now." We stood there in his doorway, locked in a staring contest. I could see him calculating his options, trying to figure out if I was bluffing. Finally, he stepped back and gestured for me to come inside. His house was a mess. Renovation projects in various states of completion covered every surface. The living room had drywall torn out. The kitchen had new cabinets installed but no countertops. Ethernet cables ran along the baseboards in multiple rooms. My cables. I recognized the specific brand and color. "I have been doing work on the house," Gerald said, voice defensive. The divorce left me broke. I could not afford to keep buying supplies, so I figured since I do so much work for the community, people would not mind sharing resources. Sharing implies asking permission. You stole from us, Gerald. You broke into our homes. He waved his hand dismissively. The default garage codes are community property. The HOA has a right to access them for emergencies. Stealing my cables is not an emergency. And no, the HOA absolutely does not have the right to break into our homes whenever they want. You know that. Gerald sat down heavily on his couch, looking older than his mid-50s suddenly. Look, I will return what I can. Some of it I already used. The concrete is in my backyard patio. The cables are installed in my walls. I cannot just rip everything out. That sounds like your problem. You are going to compensate everyone for what you stole, return what you can, and resign from the board. Today. And if I do not, I held up my phone again. Then I send this video to the police, post it in the neighborhood Facebook group, and make sure everyone knows that Gerald Mitchell, HOA board member, is a thief who breaks into people's homes. Your choice. The silence stretched out between us. I could see the wheels turning in his head, trying to find some angle or leverage, but he had nothing. The evidence was clear and I had him dead to rights. Fine, he said finally. I will send an email to the board resigning, and I will pay back what I took. But I need time to get the money together. You have 2 weeks. I want receipts for everything showing market value, and I want the amounts paid to each person you stole from. If I find out you took from anyone else who has not reported it yet, the deal is off. Gerald nodded, looking defeated. I left his house feeling vindicated but also unsettled. The whole situation was bizarre. A board member stealing from residents to fund his post-divorce renovations was the kind of thing that happened in bad TV movies, not real life. Over the next few days, things got complicated. Gerald did send a resignation email to the HOA board, citing personal reasons. But he also started spreading rumors that I had blackmailed him out of his position over a personal grudge. Some residents believed him. Others demanded to know the real story. I made a decision to post the video in the neighborhood Facebook group with a detailed explanation of what had happened. The response was immediate and explosive. People were outraged. The other victims of theft came forward with their stories. Someone discovered that Gerald had also been taking packages from porches and claiming they were misdelivered to his address. The HOA board called an emergency meeting. I attended along with about 50 other residents who wanted answers. The remaining 2 board members, a woman named Patricia who taught at ASU and a retired accountant named Robert, looked shell-shocked by the revelations. Patricia spoke first. We had no idea Gerald was accessing homes without permission. The board never discussed or approved using default garage codes for anything. This was entirely his individual action, and we are horrified. Robert added, we are conducting a full review of HOA policies and will be implementing new security measures. All default codes should be changed immediately, and we recommend everyone upgrade their security systems. The meeting devolved into chaos as residents shouted questions and demands. Some wanted criminal charges filed. Others wanted financial restitution from the HOA itself. I stayed quiet, having already said my piece through the video and documentation. After the meeting, Patricia approached me. Thank you for bringing this to light. I know it could not have been easy. Gerald had some of us convinced you were just a troublemaker who did not like following rules. He made my life difficult for 3 years over nonsense violations while he was literally robbing us. The hypocrisy is stunning. Agreed. We will be reviewing every citation he issued to see if there was a pattern of targeting specific residents. This whole thing is a nightmare. I went home that night feeling like justice was being served, but the story was not over yet. Gerald owed me and others money, and I had no confidence he would actually pay. The police were now involved after multiple residents filed formal complaints. Detective Sarah Morrison from the Phoenix PD reached out to me for a statement and copies of my video evidence. Detective Morrison was thorough and professional. She explained that what Gerald had done constituted burglary in Arizona, even without forced entry, because he had entered enclosed structures with intent to commit theft. The fact that he was an HOA board member might actually make things worse, as he had violated a position of trust within the community. 2 weeks passed, and Gerald had not paid anyone back. He stopped answering his door and phone. His house looked dark most evenings, like he was avoiding being home. The police investigation was ongoing, but these things moved slowly. I was getting frustrated with the lack of resolution. Then, on a Thursday evening in late October, something happened that would test my principles in unexpected ways. I was driving home from work on Loop 101, taking my usual exit onto Desert Ridge Drive, when I saw a car pulled over on the shoulder with its hazard lights flashing. As I got closer, I recognized the vehicle. It was Gerald's silver Toyota Camry. He was standing outside the car on his phone, looking stressed. Our eyes met as I drove past, and I saw recognition and something like hope flash across his face. He waved at me, trying to flag me down. I slowed down for just a moment, our gazes locking. Then I pressed the accelerator and kept driving. In my rearview mirror, I saw him lower his hand, phone still pressed to his ear. The decision felt petty and vindictive even as I made it. He needed help. His car had clearly broken down on a busy Phoenix road in evening traffic. The temperature was still in the high 80s even though it was October. The decent thing would have been to stop and offer assistance, or at least call a tow truck for him. But I did not. I drove home, parked in my garage with the new security system armed, and tried not to think about Gerald stranded on the side of the road. He had stolen from me. He had broken into my home. He had made my life miserable with petty violations for years while being a criminal himself. He did not deserve my help, except the guilt gnawed at me all evening. I kept imagining worst-case scenarios. What if he got hit by another car while standing on the shoulder? What if he had a heat-related emergency? Phoenix might cool down in October compared to summer, but it was still dangerous to be stranded outside for too long. I checked the neighborhood Facebook group compulsively, looking for any posts about Gerald. Nothing. I considered calling the police non-emergency line to report a stranded motorist, but talked myself out of it. He had a phone. He could call for help himself. I did not owe him anything. Around 9 that night, Patricia from the HOA board posted in the Facebook group asking if anyone had seen Gerald. Apparently, his sister had been trying to reach him for hours and was worried. She had filed a missing person report with the police. My stomach dropped. I should have stopped. I should have at least made sure he got help. I messaged Patricia directly. I saw him around 6:30 on Desert Ridge Drive near the Loop 101 exit. His car was broken down on the shoulder. He was on his phone when I drove past. She responded immediately. "Thank you. I will pass that information to his sister and the police." Then she added, "Did you stop to help?" I stared at that question for a long time before typing. No, I did not. Patricia did not respond after that. I did not blame her. I felt like garbage. Whatever Gerald had done to me, leaving someone stranded on the side of the road in Phoenix was dangerous and potentially life-threatening. My petty revenge could have had serious consequences. Fortunately, it turned out Gerald was fine. His sister found him at a gas station about 2 miles from where his car had died. He had walked there in the heat, exhausted and dehydrated but otherwise okay. A tow truck picked up his car, which had a dead battery and some other mechanical issues. The whole incident became another data point in the growing neighborhood awareness that Gerald Mitchell was having a very bad month. But word got out that I had driven past him without stopping. Some residents thought it was justified given what he had done. Others thought I had stooped to his level and should be ashamed. The neighborhood was divided on Team Peter versus Team Basic Human Decency. Honestly, I agreed with the latter group. I had let my anger override my better judgment. Yes, Gerald was a thief and a hypocrite. Yes, he had violated my home and stolen my property, but leaving him stranded was not justice. It was just cruelty disguised as principle. I decided to address it head-on. I posted in the Facebook group. I want to acknowledge that I drove past Gerald when his car broke down and did not stop to help. Whatever he has done, that was wrong of me. I let anger cloud my judgment, and I am sorry. If anyone finds themselves in a similar situation, please do not follow my example. Help people who need it, even if you do not like them. The responses were mixed but mostly positive. Some people appreciated the honesty. Others said I was being too hard on myself. A few pointed out that Gerald still owed multiple people money and had not shown any remorse for his crimes. The neighborhood dynamics were complicated and messy, exactly like real life. 3 days after the car incident, Detective Morrison called me with an update. We are moving forward with criminal charges against Gerald Mitchell. Burglary, theft, and criminal trespass. The evidence you provided was crucial. He will be formally charged next week. What kind of sentence is he looking at? Depends on the judge and his criminal history, which is clean. First offense, he is looking at probation, fines, and restitution payments. Maybe some jail time, but probably not much. The financial impact will be the main punishment. I thanked her and hung up, feeling oddly hollow. I had wanted justice and I was getting it. But the whole situation felt like everyone had lost something. Gerald had destroyed his reputation and was facing criminal charges. The neighborhood had lost trust in the HOA. I had compromised my own values by refusing to help someone in need. The following week, Gerald Mitchell was formally arrested and charged with multiple counts of burglary and theft. The local news picked up the story because HOA board member arrested for stealing from residents was too good a headline to pass up. Our quiet Saguaro Hills community was suddenly the subject of local media attention. I declined interview requests. I had no interest in being the public face of this mess. Other residents were less shy, and soon there were news segments featuring people talking about the importance of HOA oversight and community trust. It all felt overblown, but I understood why people were angry. Gerald's arraignment was set for early November. The prosecution offered him a plea deal: plead guilty to reduce charges, pay full restitution to all victims, serve 18 months probation, and complete 200 hours of community service. His alternative was going to trial and potentially facing years in prison if convicted on all counts. He took the deal. I heard about it through Patricia, who had been following the case closely. The restitution amounts were calculated based on receipts and fair market value. Gerald owed me $647 for the Ethernet cables, screws, cable ties, and the security system I had to install because of his actions. Other residents were owed similar amounts. The total restitution exceeded $8,000. He is going to be paying this off for years, Patricia said when we met for coffee at a Starbucks near the neighborhood. His finances are a disaster. The divorce cleaned him out, and now this. I almost feel bad for him, I admitted. Almost. You should not. He made his choices. He could have asked for help. He could have been honest about his financial situation. Instead, he violated people's homes and stole from his neighbors. That is not desperation. That is entitlement. She was right, of course. Gerald had felt entitled to take what he needed because of his position on the board. He had convinced himself that his work for the community justified his actions. The mental gymnastics required for that rationalization were impressive. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for late November, right before Thanksgiving. I decided to attend, along with several other victims. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, with maybe 30 seats in the gallery. Gerald sat at the defense table with his public defender, looking diminished in a cheap suit that did not fit quite right. The judge, an older Hispanic woman named Rodriguez, reviewed the case details and the plea agreement. Then she asked if any victims wanted to make statements before sentencing. 3 people stood up, including me. The first was Martha, an elderly woman whose garden hoses Gerald had stolen. She talked about feeling unsafe in her own home after learning that someone had been breaking in. The second was Daniel, whose extension ladder had been taken. He spoke about the violation of trust and how Gerald's actions as a board member made it worse. Then it was my turn. I stood and faced Gerald, who would not meet my eyes. Your Honor, Gerald Mitchell stole from me and violated my home. But what bothers me most is the hypocrisy. He spent years citing me for minor violations, making my life difficult over things that did not matter. He acted like he was protecting community standards while he was breaking into our homes and stealing our property. That level of entitlement and self-deception is dangerous. I hope he uses his probation and community service to develop some self-awareness and empathy. That is all. Judge Rodriguez nodded thoughtfully. She looked at Gerald and said, Mr. Mitchell, you held a position of trust in your community. You were supposed to represent your neighbors' interests, not prey on them. What you did was not just theft. It was a betrayal of everyone who trusted you. I am accepting the plea agreement, but I want you to understand the severity of your actions. You are sentenced to 18 months supervised probation, $8,236 in restitution to be paid over the next 2 years, and 200 hours of community service. You will also be subject to random home inspections to ensure compliance with probation terms. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, Gerald mumbled. I hope you use this time to reflect on your choices and become a better member of your community. Court is adjourned. And just like that, it was over. We filed out of the courtroom into the Phoenix sunshine. It was a perfect November day, temperature in the mid-70s with clear blue skies. Patricia caught up with me in the parking lot. How do you feel? She asked. Honestly. Empty. I got justice, but it does not feel like winning. That is because there are no winners here. Gerald destroyed his life. The community lost trust in the HOA. You had to install security cameras and spend time dealing with all this. Everyone lost something. We stood there in the parking lot, watching Gerald leave with his public defender, looking defeated and small. I thought about him stranded on the side of the road, waving for help while I drove past. I thought about the anger I had carried for weeks, the satisfaction of catching him on camera, the vindication of seeing him arrested. None of it felt as good as I thought it would. Over the next few months, life slowly returned to normal in Saguaro Hills. The HOA implemented new policies requiring background checks for board members and prohibiting any access to individual homes without explicit written permission. Patricia and Robert worked hard to rebuild trust, hosting community events and being transparent about board decisions. Gerald started paying his restitution in monthly installments. I received a check for $53.92 every month, which would continue for the next year. Each check came with a brief note. The first one said, "I am sorry for what I did." The second said, "Thank you for not pressing me harder." The third said, "I am working on being better." I did not respond to any of them. I deposited the checks and tried to move on with my life. But I thought a lot about the whole experience, about how anger can be justified but still consume you, about how revenge can be satisfying but ultimately hollow, about how refusing to help someone in need, even someone who wronged you, says more about your character than theirs. In January, I was at the grocery store when I ran into Gerald. We both froze in the produce section, holding bags of apples like weapons. The moment stretched out awkwardly. "Peter," he said finally. "Gerald, I just want you to know that I really am sorry. What I did was inexcusable." I convinced myself it was okay because I was broke and desperate, but that was just me lying to myself. You had every right to refuse to help me when my car died. I would not have helped me either. I studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or insincerity. I did not see any. He just looked tired and older, like the past few months had aged him years. "I should have stopped," I said. "Not because you deserved it, but because it was the right thing to do. I let you turn me into someone I do not want to be. We all did things we regret. I am trying to make amends." "It will take time, but I am trying." I nodded. "Good luck with that." It was not forgiveness exactly, but it was acknowledgement. Sometimes that is all you can manage. We went our separate ways in the store, and I did not see him again for months. By spring, the whole incident had faded into neighborhood lore. New residents moved in, unaware of the drama. The HOA functioned smoothly under Patricia and Robert's leadership, plus a new third board member named Jennifer who worked in nonprofit management. Life went on. I finished my home office networking project, using new Ethernet cables I purchased with Gerald's restitution money. The irony was not lost on me. My security cameras continued to monitor my property, though the only excitement they captured was occasional wildlife and delivery drivers. The experience changed me in subtle ways. I became more involved in the HOA, attending meetings and actually reading the communications instead of deleting them automatically. I met more of my neighbors and built relationships based on mutual support rather than just proximity. I volunteered for the community garden project and helped organize a neighborhood watch program. I also thought more carefully about justice versus revenge, principle versus petty vindictiveness. It is easy to justify your worst impulses when someone has wronged you. It is harder to maintain your values when tested by anger and hurt. I did not always pass that test, but I tried to learn from it. One evening in late April, I was walking my new dog, a rescue mutt named Biscuit, when I saw Gerald working in his yard. His house renovations appeared to be complete. The exterior looked fresh and well-maintained. He was planting something in the front bed, working carefully with a small trowel. He looked up as Biscuit and I approached. The dog, being friendly and oblivious to human drama, pulled toward Gerald with tail wagging. I let him sniff Gerald's hand. "Nice dog," Gerald said, scratching behind Biscuit's ears. "Thanks. Got him from the shelter last month." I have been thinking about getting a dog myself. The house feels empty. We stood there in the evening light, the tension between us diminished but not gone. I could have kept walking. I could have kept him at a distance forever, but I was tired of carrying anger. The shelter on Cave Creek Road has a lot of good dogs available. That is where I got Biscuit. I will check it out. Thanks. I nodded and continued my walk. It was not friendship. It was not even really reconciliation, but it was a small step toward being neighbors again instead of enemies. Maybe that was enough. As the months continued to pass, I reflected on everything that had happened and what it meant. Gerald had committed crimes and faced consequences. The justice system had worked more or less as intended. The community had implemented better safeguards. Everyone had learned lessons about trust and oversight, but the personal journey was messier and less satisfying than the legal one. I had been right to expose Gerald's crimes. I had been wrong to refuse him help when he needed it. Both things were true simultaneously, and I had to live with that complexity. The restitution checks kept arriving like clockwork. $53.92 on the 15th of every month. Gerald never missed a payment. By summer, I had received over $600, nearly the full amount owed. The checks stopped coming with notes after the first few months, becoming just financial transactions instead of attempts at communication. Patricia told me that Gerald had completed his community service hours working with Habitat for Humanity, helping build affordable housing in Phoenix. The irony of him doing honest construction work after stealing supplies for his own projects was not lost on anyone. But apparently, he had been reliable and hardworking, showing up every weekend for months until his hours were complete. People can change, Patricia said during one of our occasional coffee meetups. Not everyone does, but some people really do learn from their mistakes. I hope he is one of them, I said, and I meant it. The neighborhood moved on. New dramas emerged and faded. Someone planted unapproved roses. Someone else painted their front door the wrong shade of brown. The HOA dealt with these issues with appropriate levels of bureaucratic attention, but without the vindictive edge that Gerald had brought to the role. In September, nearly a year after the whole thing started, I received the final restitution check from Gerald. It was for $47.20, the last installment to bring the total to the full amount owed. There was a note with this one. Peter, this is the last check. I have paid what I owed you and everyone else. I know money does not fix what I did, but it is what the court required and what you deserved. I moved out of Saguaro Hills last week. I could not stay in a place where everyone knows what I did. I am starting over in Flagstaff, working for my brother's property management company. I hope you and the neighborhood are doing well. I am sorry for everything. Gerald. I read the note several times, then filed it away with all the other documentation from the case. I felt something like closure, though not quite satisfaction. Gerald had paid his debt, served his punishment, and left to start fresh somewhere else. The story had an ending, even if it was not the dramatic conclusion I had imagined when I first discovered my stolen cables. Biscuit barked at a lizard in the yard, pulling me out of my thoughts. I folded the note and check, deposited the money through my banking app, and went about my evening. Life continued in Saguaro Hills, with all its petty dramas and genuine community moments. The HOA sent out reminders about pool rules and landscape maintenance. Neighbors helped each other with yard work and borrowed tools, asking permission first. I kept my security cameras running but gradually checked them less frequently. The garage door keypad had been reprogrammed with a secure code that only I knew. My home office network ran smoothly with properly purchased Ethernet cables. Everything was as it should have been from the beginning, on a cool October evening, exactly 1 year after I had driven past Gerald's broken-down car. I found myself on that same stretch of Desert Ridge Drive. This time, there was a different car pulled over on the shoulder, a young woman standing next to it looking stressed and scared. The temperature had dropped into the 60s with the sun setting, but she looked vulnerable and alone. I pulled over behind her and got out. "Hey, are you okay? Do you need help?" The relief on her face was immediate. "My car just died. I do not know what happened. I called roadside assistance, but they said it will be an hour." You should not wait here alone. It is not safe. Want to sit in my car with the heat on until they arrive." She hesitated, clearly weighing stranger danger against the discomfort and risk of waiting alone. I understood completely. "I am Peter. I live in Saguaro Hills, just up the road. I can show you my license and you can take a picture to send to someone if it makes you feel safer." She made the decision and accepted. We sat in my car with the heat running, making awkward small talk about Phoenix weather and road conditions, until the tow truck arrived 35 minutes later. She thanked me profusely, and I waved it off as no big deal. But driving home, I felt something shift inside me. I had been given a chance to do the right thing, and I had taken it. Whatever had happened with Gerald, whatever complicated emotions and justified anger I had carried, I had not let it turn me into someone who drives past people who need help. That felt like growth, maybe even redemption in a small way. The story of Gerald Mitchell and the stolen cables became neighborhood legend, told to new residents as a cautionary tale about HOA oversight and community trust. The details got exaggerated in retelling. Some versions had Gerald stealing thousands of dollars worth of equipment. Others claimed he had been running some kind of black market operation out of his garage. The truth was more mundane and somehow sadder. A broke, bitter man making terrible decisions and justifying them with entitlement. I ran into Patricia at the neighborhood pool in November, where we were both attending a community meeting about holiday decorations and associated regulations. The HOA had loosened up considerably under the new board, allowing far more creativity and personal expression in seasonal displays. "Did you hear Gerald got married?" Patricia asked casually while we waited for the meeting to start. "What, really?" "Yeah, his sister posted about it on Facebook. He met someone in Flagstaff. Apparently they bonded over both going through difficult divorces. The wedding was small, just family." "Good for him, I guess. Everyone deserves a second chance." Patricia looked at me thoughtfully. "You really mean that, do not you?" "I do. What he did was wrong and he paid for it. But I do not need him to suffer forever. I just needed him to face consequences and make things right, which he did. The rest is his life to live." The meeting started, saving me from further philosophical discussion. We debated the merits of inflatable Santas versus traditional luminarias for nearly an hour before reaching a compromise that allowed both. Democracy in action, HOA style. Walking home after the meeting, I thought about the whole arc of the past year. It had started with stolen cables and ended with growth, change, and a complicated understanding of justice and forgiveness. Not the dramatic arc you see in movies, but something more real and messy and human. My house looked welcoming in the evening light, security cameras discreetly monitoring but not dominating the property. Biscuit barked excitedly when I came through the door, wanting dinner and attention. I fed him and settled onto the couch, checking my phone out of habit. There was a message from an unknown number. "Hi Peter, this is Gerald. I got your number from Patricia. I hope that is okay. I just wanted to let you know that I got married and I am doing better. I think about what I did every day and I am working to be a better person. Thank you for giving me the chance to make things right, even though I did not deserve it. I hope you are well. Take care." I read the message several times, emotions swirling, anger at what he had done, satisfaction that he had faced consequences, awkwardness at his attempts to maintain some kind of connection. Ultimately, acceptance that people are complicated and growth is possible even after terrible mistakes. I typed a response. "Congratulations on the marriage. I wish you well in Flagstaff. Take care of yourself." Simple, clean, closing the door on that chapter without slamming it. I hit send and set my phone aside, scratching Biscuit behind his ears. The dog leaned into me, content, and trusting in the way only dogs can be. Maybe there was a lesson there about letting go of grudges and living in the present. The holidays came and went in Saguaro Hills, with the usual combination of festivity and HOA-related tension over decoration regulations. I hosted my family for Thanksgiving, proudly showing off my home network setup that had started this whole saga. My sister asked about the Gerald situation, having followed it all through my periodic updates. So he just moved away, that is it. That is it. He paid restitution, completed probation, and started over somewhere else. What else should happen? I do not know. It feels anticlimactic. Most real-life situations are. We want dramatic confrontations and satisfying conclusions, but usually things just peter out and people move on. She considered that while helping me set the table. Are you glad you caught him? Yes. He needed to face consequences. But I am not glad I refused to help him when his car died. That still bothers me. You are too hard on yourself. He stole from you. True. But two wrongs do not make a right. Mom used to say that all the time, and she was correct. Thanksgiving dinner was loud and chaotic with family, the way holidays should be. We ate too much and argued about politics and laughed at old stories. The Gerald situation did not come up again. It was just one thread in the larger fabric of my life, important but not defining. Winter in Phoenix was beautiful that year, with cool temperatures and occasional rain that turned the desert briefly green. I hiked in the preserve near Saguaro Hills most weekends, Biscuit charging ahead on the trails with boundless energy. The community felt stable and happy, the HOA functioning as it should without drama or corruption. In February, Patricia announced she was stepping down from the board to focus on a promotion at ASU that would require more time. The neighborhood thanked her for her service and steady leadership during a difficult period. A new election brought in fresh board members who were enthusiastic and qualified. The cycle continued as it does. I thought less and less about Gerald as time passed. The whole incident became just a story I told occasionally when HOA horror stories came up in conversation. My version emphasized the importance of security systems and knowing your neighbors, the practical lessons rather than the emotional ones. But late one night in March, unable to sleep, I found myself thinking about the whole situation again. What would I have done differently if I could go back? I would have changed my garage door code immediately, obviously. I would have installed security cameras sooner. Those were the practical changes. The harder question was whether I would have driven past Gerald's broken-down car again. Knowing what I knew about how that decision had eaten at me for months, how it had compromised my sense of myself as a decent person, would I still have made the same choice in the heat of anger? I wanted to say no. I wanted to believe I would stop and help anyone in need, regardless of history. But I was not sure. Anger is powerful, and the desire for petty revenge can overwhelm better judgment. Maybe the lesson was not that I should have acted differently, but that I needed to forgive myself for being human and fallible. Biscuit snored softly at the foot of my bed, paws twitching in some dream. I reached down and patted him gently, grounding myself in the present moment. The past was done. Gerald had paid his debt and moved on. I had learned my lessons and grown from the experience. The neighborhood was better protected and more aware. That was enough. It had to be enough. Spring brought the usual HOA concerns about landscaping and water usage, the eternal Phoenix struggle between wanting green lawns and respecting desert ecology. I attended a community workshop on xeriscaping and native plants, genuinely interested in making my yard more sustainable. The presenter was passionate and knowledgeable, and I left with plans to replace my struggling grass with a beautiful arrangement of agave, prickly pear, and desert marigolds. While working in my front yard a week later starting the conversion process, a car pulled up and someone called my name. I looked up to see an unfamiliar woman in her 30s, smiling tentatively. "Peter Patterson. That is me. Can I help you?" "I am Jennifer Mitchell, Gerald's sister." "Do you have a minute to talk?" My stomach tightened. I had not expected any continued contact with Gerald's family, but curiosity won out over reluctance. I brushed dirt off my hands and walked over to her car. "What can I do for you?" "I wanted to thank you, actually, for holding Gerald accountable, but also for accepting his restitution and not pushing for harsher punishment. He told me about everything, how he hit rock bottom and made terrible choices. The consequences you helped enforce were exactly what he needed." I did not know what to say to that. "I just wanted my cables back and to feel safe in my home." "I know, but you also gave him a path forward. Some of the other neighbors wanted him in jail for years. You pushed for justice but also allowed for redemption. That matters. He is doing really well in Flagstaff. He has been seeing a therapist, working on the issues that led to his bad decisions. The marriage is good for him too. He is happy for the first time in years. I am glad he is doing better. I really am." Jennifer smiled. "I believe you. Anyway, I just wanted you to know that your approach, even though it must have been hard when you were angry, made a real difference. Thank you." She drove away, leaving me standing in my front yard processing the conversation. I had not thought of myself as giving Gerald a path to redemption. I had just wanted justice and restitution. But maybe that was enough. Maybe holding people accountable while also allowing them to make amends and move forward was exactly the balance that created real change. I returned to my xeriscaping project, turning over soil and thinking about growth in all its forms. Plants adapting to desert conditions. People learning from mistakes. Communities healing from breaches of trust. It all took time and effort and the right conditions. By summer, my front yard was transformed. The struggling grass was gone, replaced by a stunning arrangement of native plants that required minimal water and maintenance. Neighbors stopped to compliment the work and ask for advice on their own yards. I became the informal neighborhood expert on desert landscaping, sharing what I had learned. The HOA continued to function smoothly. No major dramas emerged. Life in Saguaro Hills settled into a comfortable rhythm of community events. Minor disputes resolved through conversation, and the ordinary joys and challenges of neighborhood living. It was exactly what it should have been all along. One evening in late July, during a spectacular monsoon sunset that painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, I sat on my back patio with Biscuit and reflected on the journey from those stolen cables to this peaceful moment. The anger I had carried for so long was gone, replaced by a kind of acceptance and understanding of human complexity. Gerald had done wrong and faced consequences. I had responded imperfectly but ultimately fairly. The system had worked to deliver justice and allow for rehabilitation. The community had healed and implemented better protections. Everyone had learned something, even if the lessons were uncomfortable. That was the real story, I realized. Not a tale of good versus evil or perfect justice, but a messy, human story about mistakes and consequences and growth. The kind of story that does not make good television but reflects actual life, with all its complications and nuances. Biscuit barked at something in the yard, probably another lizard or rabbit. I laughed and called him back to the patio, where we watched the sunset together in comfortable silence. The security cameras hummed quietly, monitoring but not intruding. The house stood solid and safe around us. The neighborhood lived its collective life just beyond my walls. Everything was as it should be. Not perfect, because life never is, but good enough, which is often all we can hope for. The final realization came not with drama or fanfare, but with quiet understanding during an ordinary moment. I had wanted justice, and I got it. I had wanted consequences for someone who wronged me, and those happened. But what I had not expected was how much the process would change me, forcing me to examine my own values and capacity for both anger and compassion. Gerald Mitchell stole my cables, violated my home, and betrayed his position of trust. Those facts never changed. But he also paid for his crimes, made restitution, and worked to become better. Those facts mattered too. Both things could be true simultaneously, and accepting that complexity was what allowed me to finally move forward without the weight of anger. As darkness fell over Phoenix, and the monsoon clouds gathered for another evening storm, I went inside and began my normal evening routine. I checked the security cameras one last time, more out of habit than concern. I fed Biscuit and made dinner for myself. I settled onto the couch with a book and the dog at my side, content in the ordinary peace of a Tuesday evening in July. The stolen cables were long since replaced. The violation of my garage was addressed with better security. The betrayal of trust was answered with accountability and consequences. The story was complete, all loose ends tied up, everyone moved on to their next chapters. And me. I was exactly where I should be, in a home I felt safe in a neighborhood I was part of, with lessons learned and grudges released. The story of Gerald and the stolen cables would fade with time, becoming just another experience that shaped who I was but did not define me. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything I needed it to be. Thunder rumbled in the distance as the monsoon rolled in, bringing the desert's evening blessing of rain. I turned out the lights and headed to bed, Biscuit trailing behind me, both of us ready for whatever tomorrow brought. The past was settled. The present was good. The future was unwritten. And somewhere in Flagstaff, Gerald Mitchell was hopefully experiencing the same kind of peace, having learned his lessons and committed to being better. I hoped so anyway. Not for his sake particularly, but because the alternative, people never learning or growing from their mistakes, was too depressing to contemplate. We are all capable of being better than our worst moments. That was the lesson I carried forward from the whole experience. Gerald showed me his worst, and then worked to prove he could be better. I showed my own worst when I refused to help him, and then worked to forgive myself and do better in the future. Human beings are complicated, capable of tremendous good and terrible wrong, sometimes within the same day. The challenge is learning from both, holding ourselves accountable while also allowing for growth and change. That balance is hard to find and harder to maintain, but it is essential for any kind of meaningful progress. The rain started falling, the beautiful desert rain that smells like creosote and promises, washing everything clean for a few precious hours. I fell asleep to the sound of thunder and water on the roof, Biscuit warm against my side, my house secure around me, my conscience finally clear. The story of the stolen cables was over, but the lessons it taught me would last much longer, informing how I treated people, how I pursued justice, how I balanced accountability with compassion. Those lessons were the real value of the whole experience, worth far more than $647 or the satisfaction of seeing someone punished. In the end, we all got what we needed. Gerald got consequences and a chance to start over. I got justice and important lessons about myself. The neighborhood got better security and more vigilant oversight. Perfect? No, but good enough, which is the most we can expect from an imperfect world full of imperfect people doing their best, and that finally, truly, was enough.